Chemical tests for iodide. Iodides are inorganic salts containing iodide ion, which is one of the largest monoatomic anions. In iodides, iodine is present in the formal oxidation state -1. In our daily life, iodide is encountered as a component of iodized salt. Another important salt of iodide ion is silver iodide. Our aim here is to test the presence of iodide ion in a given salt. Let's see the preliminary tests of iodide. The preliminary tests are dry heating test, potassium permanganate test, concentrated sulfuric acid test. Dry heating test. Materials required: original salt, starch paper, test tube holder, and Bunsen burner. Procedure: take a small quantity of the salt in a test tube and heat it over the Bunsen burner. On heating, iodide undergoes decomposition to liberate dark violet vapors of iodine, and the liberated iodine undergoes sublimation to form a black sublimate. Place a starch paper over the mouth of the test tube. The liberated iodine reacts with starch to form a blue-black complex that turns the starch paper blue. Potassium permanganate test. Materials required: original salt, dilute sulfuric acid, potassium permanganate solution, test tube holder, droppers, and a Bunsen burner. Procedure: take a small amount of the salt in the test tube. To this, add a small volume of dilute sulfuric acid using a dropper. Boil the contents over the Bunsen burner to boil off any gas evolved. To this, add little more dilute sulfuric acid. Then add potassium permanganate solution dropwise using another dropper. Potassium permanganate decolorized due to the formation of colorless manganese sulfate along with iodine gas is liberated. Concentrated sulfuric acid test. Materials required: original salt, concentrated sulfuric acid, starch paper, test tube, and a dropper. Procedure: take a small amount of the salt in a test tube. To this, add a small volume of concentrated sulfuric acid using a dropper. Iodide reacts with concentrated sulfuric acid to form dark violet vapors of iodine, which undergo sublimation to form a black sublimate. Now, place a starch paper over the mouth of the test tube. The liberated iodine reacts with starch to form a blue-black complex that turns the starch paper blue. Next, we look at the confirmatory tests of iodide. The confirmatory tests are silver nitrate test, manganese dioxide test, chlorine water test. Silver nitrate test. Materials required: aqueous solution of the salt, silver nitrate solution, dilute nitric acid, test tube holder, droppers, and a Bunsen burner. Procedure: take a portion of aqueous solution of the salt in a test tube. To acidify the aqueous solution, add some dilute nitric acid into it using a dropper. Boil the contents for some time over the Bunsen burner and cool it. Now, add a few drops of silver nitrate solution using another dropper. Iodide reacts with silver nitrate to form a yellow precipitate of silver iodide. Manganese dioxide test. Materials required: original salt, manganese dioxide, concentrated sulfuric acid, test tube holder, spatula, dropper and a Bunsen burner. Procedure: take a small quantity of the salt in a test tube. To this, add a small amount of manganese dioxide using the spatula. Now, add a few drops of concentrated sulfuric acid using the dropper. Heat the contents of the test tube over the Bunsen burner. Iodide reacts with manganese dioxide and concentrated sulfuric acid to evolve violet vapors of iodine. Chlorine water test. Materials required: aqueous solution of the salt, dilute hydrochloric acid, cyclohexane, chlorine water, test tube and droppers. Procedure: take a small portion of the aqueous solution in the test tube. To acidify the aqueous solution, add a small volume of dilute hydrochloric acid using a dropper. Now, add a small volume of cyclohexane to the test tube using a dropper. Cyclohexane forms a separate layer above the aqueous solution. Then, add chlorine water to the test tube using another dropper. Shake the contents of the test tube vigorously and allow it to stand. The iodine liberated in this reaction, being soluble in cyclohexane, imparts a violet color to the cyclohexane layer. Precautions: handle the apparatus and chemicals carefully. Use droppers to take the reagents from the bottles. Wear a lab coat and gloves while performing the experiment.